we have this set of expectations today that why can't we get it digitally? One, it's green. How many trees have I knocked down from my card deck collection behind me, right? We don't need to print it. But more importantly, it's not about printing it or even the trees. It's the fact it's weightless and spaceless, right? You could have if every deck you owned was on Deckible, you have a device that doesn't get any bigger. This is like a TARDIS, right? You can actually fit an infinite amount of stuff inside it. It doesn't get bigger. It doesn't get heavier. And Apple launched the iPod with the 1,000 songs in your pocket. It was a very cool metaphor. And it's like, well, you can have all the decks you need in your pocket on the go wherever you are. Because when is it in your day you have a spare moment? Well, it's when you're on a bus, on a plane, in a reception. Well, you can doom scroll and dive into social media, but was that good practical use of your day?
Yeah.
Probably not. So those can become learning moments, right?
And I guess this brings us to the whole question, and this is one of the big questions, and I think we touched on the reasoning behind it, is that, and also like Nick, I'm really burning to jump into and show Deckible a little bit, because we've messed around in it the last couple of weeks. The thing is that I'll be remiss not to ask you this question, right? Is that, and I think we've debated a little bit, is that there's this idea of the physical, which I adore. But then you have the digital, right? And I think you've touched on that. It's like, cool, you can have a couple in your pocket. So, for example, I have the physical card deck of Dave Gray with all the different frameworks on it. But to be honest with you,
you've got it it's on the wall behind you as a poster.
Here it is, right? And this is my son's artwork too, right? But it's here, I see it. But lots of times when I reference it, because I'm thinking of certain problems and issues, I actually jump into Deckible to just flick through the digital version. It's just easy because I'm too lazy as to walk 5 meters that way.
But you're also lucky enough you work from home, I don't know, 4 days a week or something. So
get me into trouble here. 2 days, my boss might be watching.
Okay. But if someone works wherever you are, the content is not where you are, right? Even if you're in a building and you're wondering, wow, it's not here, right? You've got it on your phone to show someone else. It's a learning communication tool that you can rely upon, right? And the funniest thing I don't think people think about just the power of platforms, but I was a serial Spotify disliker. I really didn't want to go to Spotify because I've bought these albums. I bought them again as CDs. I had my several album boxes of albums that I collected, and then I bought them again as CDs. And then I digitized them, and then I'm like, Apple starts trying to sell me iTunes and buy the song, very clever, right? And then Spotify comes along and says, have it all, right? And in the end, what I pay for on Spotify is my mental construct. I don't pay for the music on Spotify. I pay for the data that Spotify adds on top of the music. So I can pick a song, pick a band, and say, create me a radio station for this song. That's based on a lot of intelligence and a lot of data. I don't need to know all the other bands that are like this because it does it for me. So it keeps me current, interesting. It finds me new bands to like, all because I said, I love this band, I love this song, make me a radio station. That is valuable. Playlists are valuable. So every platform, why is Amazon valuable? Because it tells you everyone who bought this also bought that, right?
Yeah.
We don't think of that because it's like breathing. It's just part of our existence these days. But that's what a platform does, right? And so digital does more. What does that mean? Well, if I pick out this physical deck here, right? It's got a problem. It's got a two-sided problem. Even Elon Musk can't make paper three-sided, right?
Yeah.
So you put the stuff on the front, the stuff on the back, and you've got some other stuff you want to say. Where does it go? Well, in card books, they send it to a guidebook. That's kind of it. We didn't make it on the card. It's in the guidebook. No one looks at the guidebook. No one uses it. With Deckible, we don't. Because we're digital, we have we have 3 sides or 4 sides, right? So the digital experience is richer. We're not trying to compete. It's just saying that's what you can do, right? And in addition to that, we can also have audio and video.
Yeah.
So I can listen to you telling me about the card or a story about how this game mechanic is used. Give me the story. That's the best way to make me emotionally connected. I don't know if you heard of this. 7% comes from words, 28% comes from audio, and the balance comes from the full experience, right? We get so much more from when we see the person. So why does the card deck just have words and images on it? right? Digitally, it doesn't have to.
But Nick, like it's me rubbing my fingers together, and I'm probably going ahead of myself here because we still have a couple of topics that we wanted to cover. But shall we just jump into Deckible, right? Like kind of it. I think you set down like a long argument, and I want to kind of people like we can talk a little bit through this because I think there's also a lot of practical questions, right? But the thing is also like, and now we're going to kind of game away, right? Because we were geeking out about it. Like my mom, you and me are probably going to be like stoked about it, but we were actually really in Deckible all the time, right? So I'm just gonna go there and like have like a little applause button, right?
Yeah, we talked about this the other day, and it was like, you know what? I know what I'm going to talk through, so I just turned it into a flashcard, 6 flashcards to remind me through that, right? So you can flip them over, right? You just tap the cards to flip them over, and that was the essence of the talk. And you know, honestly, I love the expression as a Brit. The expression is to eat your own dog food.
Yeah.
And we used to have a guy worked at a supermarket who was a dog buyer he bought the dog food, right? And he used to go on TV and eat dog food. It was a wonderful metaphor. So we're using this, right? We're using, I gave the father of the bride speech at my daughter's wedding using a card deck that I made on Deckible just for the purpose, right? Everyone else at the wedding, their speech papers were floating in the wind. Mine was just on the phone. I just flipped